name's Etienne Kabwasa Green. I go by Kabwasa. My pronouns are he, him, his. Um, yeah, I'm from Watsonville, California. I graduated USC class of 2020. I feel like organizing it, a lot of it kind of took on a life of its own. It got like incredibly big, as you guys probably saw in June. And I think one of the most exciting things for me was seeing how many, like Black USC students and then Black people, like, and people of all different ethnicities around the community, like joining together in such incredible numbers and being so passionate that like they had this opportunity to speak and to walk and to be heard. It was just like really fulfilling almost to see that and to hear from all these different people. So that was the biggest thing for me. Well, I think the biggest challenge was how big it got. I wasn't prepared. Like I had, mapped out this march with my roommate and bought some water bottles and a megaphone. And I was ready to go out and give some people water and march with, 20 or so people, 20, 30 people. And it just kind of blew up on Instagram and then it blew up on Twitter and it was being shared all over the place. So I wasn't ready to take it all on. But luckily, I was able to get in contact with the DPS chief um, who helped in having his like DPS patrol standoff, and like he made sure that LAPD was nowhere in sight, which was also made everyone feel more comfortable. And then I got help from other students, and I reached out to people that had these strong, powerful voices that could speak at the end of the march at the rally. And yeah, it all just kind of came together with the help of like the bigger USC community. So yeah. Since the protest, I think there's been like um I want to say that there's been more changes than there has, but there's been like some surface level things. But I will say some things that USC has done in terms of acknowledging where they stand as an institution has been pretty impressive in my opinion, and like making some of the moves that they made towards a better future for Black and brown students at USC. I got a call from actually the DPS chief, Thomas, a few weeks after the protest, telling me that he had started a program where all of the officers in his like line would do like an educational period where they had to learn about the history of policing and how it came from slave patrol and all of those things. And that, I think in itself, the fact that that came from the march was, I think, a positive. So there's obviously a lot more work that needs to be done, but we're moving in the right direction. Yeah, I think one of the big things, one of the people that I reached out to and asked to speak was Jefta, and he's like a pretty powerful, or they're a pretty powerful student, excuse me. They're a pretty powerful student at USC and they have the power to influence a lot of people because their voice is so powerful. And they were able to get a meeting with Carol Fault after speaking at the rally. And I think it was after that that they were able to get her to make the changes to VKC, the building that was named after the eugenics leader. So that was like a pretty direct like thing that happened as a result of the march and of Jefta speaking with the president. So that was like a really positive thing. Yeah, I think just continuing, because at USC, clearly we haven't gotten down to all the issues that exist. So I think continuing to have the students speak up about the things that are problematic and the things that need to be changed is key. Yeah, and I think people are doing a great job making sure that the voices of like the minority people and the people that are, that there aren't that many of, have the chance to continue to be heard. So continue to have these meetings with our students, and having the DPS chief continue to um, work with us instead of against us, like things that can continue without me and without the class that was there for the march, but things that will continue for the people that are coming in from high school now. What I was saying was I wanted to inform people about the injustices of um, the police system and the justice system in the United States. And to me, like, I don't think we've made progress in fixing that, because it's the police officers that were involved in a bunch of the killings that we were protesting for were just let off in the past, few months. So obviously the system hasn't been fixed. So I don't think I would change any of the things that I said at that point today, but I will say that I would like double down on the informative like things that I would say, just to continue to make sure people know like where policing came from, why it is the way it is. One of the big things that I was explaining was all the similarities between the slave patrol from the 1700s and the LAPD now. The fact that they were enforcing curfews and like preventing people from organizing. That was what the duties were. It was keeping slaves in check and keeping like the black people in check, and that's basically what they were doing here. So until that kind of stuff gets changed, I can't really say that there's been a lot done. I think unfortunately the way that just like society in general works is people get fired up and then it dissipates, which is unfortunate, but it's like a reality. And I think this past movement, because the Black Lives Matter movement has existed for a long time, like it's not something that came about in 2020. Um, but I think this past movement was bigger than it had ever been before. And even though it's kind of settled almost to where people aren't talking about it as much, it's still relevant and it still exists. And there's going to be another, you know what I mean? There's going to be another time when it erupts. And when it does, it's going to be even bigger than it was the last time. So if it continues to gain steam and gain momentum, and there continues to be people realizing like, oh, like there's something wrong here and we need to do something about it, the more times it comes, the bigger it's going to be and the closer to, a reality of change that we're going to get. So yeah, as long as there's people that continue to push it. Absolutely, yeah. And I've even had a few upcoming USC students that had graduated high school reach out to me via email and say like, hey, I really appreciated what you did and I want to continue this. Um, can you like give me some pointers? And I've just been like, work with the people around you and like continue to push for the things that you believe in. And it like shows clearly that there are people, and this is as recent as like a month ago that people have reached out and said they want to continue. So there's definitely like there's a lot of people that are very vocal and very active, myself included, and the friends and people around me that were there at the march then are still incredibly active today, speaking out for the things that are still unjust and haven't been fixed. So yeah, I've got hope. I think there's some cool people around. For me, my activism and my music alike just come from like how I'm feeling. They come from like a very personal place for me. So naturally when I'm making music, if I'm feeling frustrated and like feeling like stuck and that's what's in my heart at the moment, that's just what's going to come out on the paper. So like when during the after George Floyd was shot and these constant, problems with the police. And then when the Black Lives Matter movement was erupting, there was so much like rage and frustration in my heart that like when I went to writing, which is like the only way that I know how to let those emotions out, it came out the way it did with the song that I made. It was called Black Movement, and I released that before the protest, but it kind of continued to like people were playing it at other protests in other locations, and kind of reminded me that like my music should always kind of hold that kind of personal, yeah, personal like energy. So yeah, I would say that my activism and my music hand in hand just come from where I'm feeling. So they're always gonna be politically like vocal and stuff. I would say that a lot of the things that before I going to USC, I was able to learn a lot, like arriving at USC, and I was an anthropology major as well. So I learned a lot about culture and a lot about racism for sure, because anthropology has like a past, you know, a history of racist origins. And so I was able to educate myself a lot, I think, throughout my time at USC. And I think that was able to influence my ability to knowledgeably enter this space of protest and revolt. Um, so yeah, I would say like being at USC and meeting the people that I met at USC has been definitely a plus in terms of the social justice that I've been trying to pursue. Reaching out to the powerful like friends and people that you may know, or even if you people you don't know, just reaching out and saying, hey, like I want to support and I want to help. Things like what the young woman that reached out to me and said like, hey, I just want to continue this, how do I do that? Things like that I think are key. And those are things that I did myself too, even before. When I set up the protest, I knew I wanted people to speak, and I knew there were people who had voices far powerful than mine. And those were the people that I reached out to and said, hey, I want to share, you know, I want to be active. I need your help. And those people came and made it so much bigger than what it was, than what I thought it would be. So yeah, I would say like just communicating and sharing is the key. My influences in music and activism definitely tie together. One of the people that I'm heavily influenced by is her name is No Name. She's a rapper and incredibly politically active and politically vocal to the point where she has people that like furiously hate her, you know, like conservative people that just hate her. And I feel like and she holds so much power in her voice, and I'm definitely influenced by her. And then on top of that, I grew up in a household that had always been incredibly politically active and had pursued activism. And so while I was here in LA putting together this protest, my brother was in Santa Cruz spearheading a protest where he gave like a speech in front of like thousands of people. And my sister was in New York attending marches on a daily basis. So it's kind of like a thing that exists in my family where um, there is no option of silence, you know, like it's just like kind of how we are and how it is. So I'm influenced by them, my siblings, my parents. Yeah. So like I said, my family has always been like there's pictures of me on my dad's shoulder holding a protest sign marching for um, the anti-war protests back when George Bush was president. You know, and my like, you know, and I was like, I don't know how old, like 8 years old or something, but I was up there with my, you know, and so it's just been second nature. Like it's never been a decision that I had to make. It's just been what I do and like what's right. So I've even before I was doing music professionally, I had been writing and making little songs and putting them on SoundCloud or YouTube. And like people would be like, yo, why are you so like aggressive? Or why are you so, you know? And And I'm just like this 14-year-old that's just like expressing, with no holding back. So yeah, that just kind of carried on for me from the jump into this. I mean, just for me, I want to make sure that the students, because what it comes down to is really the students, and like they're the ones that are gonna make the change, ask for the change, and make it happen. And that's what happened with this protest, and I think that's what's gonna happen in the future. So for any students at USC, just continue to fight that fight and demand what's right. Yeah, like don't settle. It was an emotional experience for me, but I'm more just proud because the amount of support that came flooding in immediately as soon as I said I wanted to put together a march, and all the people that I reached out to and said, "Hey, do you mind speaking?" They all were there and ready to speak. There was people, the amount of support that the USC students like came with just makes me incredibly proud. And um, I just definitely have the notion that it's going to continue. Like marches like this will keep happening because it's the students, and the students are just, I don't think the students will give up. And yeah, that's something I'm really proud of and excited to see continue. Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music. My social medias are all the same, just KABWASA _.